Okay, looks like we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, early afternoon to you all. I'm going to start my presentation by asking you a few questions. What if I told you that simply reversing the way that you communicate and market to car shoppers could change the course of your business forever, sending gross sales to levels you've never imagined possible? What if I told you that our industry has victimized you and that car shoppers are paralyzed from you asking too much? That changing your approach could double your SEM ROI? What if I told you that paying attention to the 90% plus that don't convert on your website can increase your chances of getting more car shoppers to your showroom and hold your vendors more accountable? And last, what if I told you that simply measuring your calls to your dealership can help you get more out of your SEM ROI? And what if I told you that you could do this all by yourself, regardless of your skill level? My name is Truman Hedding, and the title of my session is Guaranteed Ways to Increase Your SEM ROI Tomorrow. I'm the VP of Marketing for Showroom Logic. First, I'm going to take care of a few housekeeping items. Digital Dealer is being generous in a nice giveaway. They're giving away a free iPad. All you have to do is use the hashtag DD17 with something relevant and important that you took away from my session or another session. Along the way, I have a few what we'll call golden nuggets. I've built a career out of believing in helping people. I believe that if you empower people, they can shine on their own. And I'm a big fan of education. Due to the nature of 50 minutes that I do have, I can't share everything with you. So I do have a number of resources available for you. I'll reference the URL at the end of this presentation to help you along the way. And then at the end of the presentation, hopefully we'll have about 5 or 10 minutes where we can have an open Q&A. And then last but not least, the cell phones. So what you're going to learn to believe today is the power of a why message. You're going to learn the paradox of choice and how too many options can ultimately work against you. You're going to learn that everything can be tested and tracked, and that it has a much bigger impact than you think. And the impact of handling calls from SEM is better. Note that I have additional resources that's available at the end of this presentation, as I referenced earlier. So how my background ultimately led me to greater SEM ROI. The fortunate opportunity to start working in marketing in early 2000, had a strong passion for search engine optimization, worked in the most competitive markets, but ultimately that obsession became too much, and not having control over what actually happens next was hard for me. I wanted to have more accountability, be able to research and study and make better decisions, quicker decisions, and more importantly, I wanted to be able to act on those decisions quickly. So from 2004 to 2011, I've had the opportunity to work with literally thousands of businesses through agencies and owning my own businesses, over $300 million in paid search ad spend, and that's just a safe estimate. And that paid search optimization ultimately led to a passion for conversion rate optimization, or CRO as we call it. 2011 to present, I've had the great pleasure of working for an amazing company and working specifically with automotive paid search and working with 6 of the top 10 mega dealers and over 1,000 dealers nationwide. To summarize, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things. I've had a lot of opportunity to see what has worked for various businesses, regardless of industry, regardless of size. And I'm part of an organization that is one of 41 Google AdWords qualified reps and one of 18 Google Premier SMB partners. So if you want to get more ROI out of your SEM, you must truly understand that SEM traffic behaves differently than that of organic or direct navigation. Let's take a look at a few of the examples I put together in the search. We'll take a look at the search query and in the context of how people are searching. So at the top, we have an example of a few organic key phrases. We have Toyota dealership, Toyota dealer LA. These are queries that dealers can rank for with ease. Now, sure, if you're in a competitive market and there's multiple Toyota dealerships, it's going to be harder. But these are the queries where it's generally an information gathering search. A lot of times, organic traffic is actually converting and bringing traffic that's searching for sales. And then we'll take a look at a blend of paid search and organic traffic. So in these examples I've given, we have a geo modifier, and we have consumers who are on the fence of almost ready to buy. If I am in the market for a Lexus IS250, I'm looking for a Lexus dealer in my area. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to know what Lexus dealers are in my area, but that's how I'm going to start my query. So this is something that you could potentially rank for organically, and this is something that you obviously would be buying from a paid search standpoint. And then we'll take a look at a pure paid search query. So, consumers and the way that they search, we've made a great habit out of truly understanding consumer intent. And what I'll show you here in a few minutes is how understanding how to track the 90% plus that won't convert on your site to a form fill or a phone call actually gives you more insight to what the true search query intent is. And the last example that we have here is a Toyota Corolla lease, a Toyota Corolla pricing. These are people that are lower in the funnel. So let's take a look at the common roadblocks, as we'll call them, to preventing you from getting greater SEM ROI. One of the biggest mistakes I see, and psychologists have seen and proven, and something that's very easy to do, is to lead with a why message. And some of you may have seen recent talk in forums about the power of why. And I can't stress enough how important this single point is going to be for you. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this session, you ask yourself the question, is it possible for a single guy in a single session to actually impact your business, to do as I stated? And I believe that is possible, and I can help you get there. All you have to do is focus on these 4 things, control of yourself, and I can personally guarantee that you will see a greater ROI for your dealership, without a doubt. So let's see if we can get anybody to volunteer. Is anybody in this audience willing to volunteer a reason why a consumer should buy from your dealership? Anyone? I'm sorry, your inventory. So you have great inventory. Any others? Great shopping experience on your website or at the dealership, or both? Both. Okay. So those are great whats. Other examples may be, low price guarantee. There's several other examples. You have one? Location? Okay. So location could be another what as well. But I'm talking about why, not what. What you do is simply the proof of why you do it. What you do is simply the proof of why you do it. The goal, ultimately, is to not do business with everyone you think needs your cars. The goal of your business should be to sell your cars to people who believe what you believe. Who believe what you believe. And I'll show you exactly how important that is and why you want to pay attention to it. Simon Sinek had a great TED Talk in 2009. Some of you may have already seen it. He's also an author and a marketing consultant. The book starts with why. And I'll summarize kind of 3 main points that are relevant to today's conversation on how you can get more ROI out of your SEM yourself, and how you can do this tomorrow. What he covered was ultimately, how do inspired leaders in organizations get ahead? How do they get ahead? We'll go over the golden circle, how simple it is, and how relevant it is to understanding how you should communicate with your target market. And we'll go over the law of diffusions of innovations and how that ties in to you being able to achieve mass market success. So first we'll go over how some get ahead. The one thing that is consistent is that they all think, act, and communicate the same way. Regardless of size, we're here for automotive, and regardless of industry, they all think, act, and communicate the same exact way. And is the exact opposite to everyone else. They all act, think, and communicate the same way, and it's the exact opposite to everyone else. This is all inspirable leaders and great organizations. They all act, communicate, and think the same way, and it's the exact opposite of everyone else. The few examples that he gave were Apple. How is it that Apple is continuing to innovate? Year after year after year, we feel comfortable buying MP3 players from them, phones from them. How is it that they're able to get ahead when there's other companies and organizations that build computers and products? They have access to the same technology, the same people, the same consultants, the same media. How is it that Apple is able to get ahead? Martin Luther King. How is it that Martin Luther King was able to lead the civil rights movement? How is it that Martin Luther King was able to get 250,000 people to show up on a hot summer day, in some cases to drive 8 hours? It wasn't a plan that he had. Remember, his speech was, "I have a dream." Those 250,000 people did not show up for him. They showed up for themselves. They showed up for themselves. The Wright brothers. How is it that the Wright brothers, with no access to funding, no formal education, were able to achieve powered manned flight? Not too many people have heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley, but Samuel Pierpont Langley had everything that we would expect and we would assume for a perfect market condition. He had access to funding. The government gave him $50,000. The New York Times followed him everywhere. But how is it that he wasn't and the Wright brothers were? The main difference between the two is that the Wright brothers, they funded their approach, they funded their goal with proceeds from the sales of their bicycles. They invested their time and energy. They truly believed that if they can develop powered flight, they could change the course of the world. Whereas Samuel Pierpont Langley was in it for the money. He was in it for the fame. And that's evident by the fact that the day that we found out, actually we found out 2 days later, that the Wright brothers had achieved man-powered flight, Samuel Pierpont Langley quit. He could have taken his resources. He could have gone to the Wright brothers and said, "I want to invest my resources, my money, to improve your technology," but he didn't. He wasn't first, and he didn't make money, so he quit. The Wright brothers were able to achieve powered manned flight because they believed in changing the course of the world, and they did that with blood, sweat, and tears. The golden circle is something that Simon Sinek explained as quite possibly the most simplest idea in the world. And the basic idea is this. The easy way for us to communicate as marketers and the easy way for us to absorb information as consumers is to communicate from the outside in. On the outside we have the what, and it goes into the how, and it goes into the why. That's our natural process. Whereas the great leaders and the great organizations that are able to inspire people, not only are they consistent in the way that they act and communicate, but they communicate from the inside out. They start with the why. And that's what I'm here to show you today. So we'll take Apple as an example because it's easy for us to have passion for. If Apple were like everyone else, their message would be like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed. They're simple to use, user-friendly, one to buy one. This is how Apple communicates. Actually, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? All we did here is reverse the order. This proves for us that people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. People do not buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Loyalty in the car business, is it possible? And there's a lot of arguments that state that it's not. On average, consumers have 60% of consumers have a specific car in mind when they visit a dealership. And how many of those actually buy that specific car? Does anybody know? Great. Close, 20%. 60% of consumers go on a lot with a specific car in mind. 20% actually buy that car. Apple has developed a way of living that has inspired consumers to believe what they believe so much that they'll wait in line for up to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, for a product that they can get a week later. Another great example of a company that leads with the why would be Tom's Shoes. Anybody in here have a pair of Tom's Shoes? Okay, Tom's Shoes is wildly successful. In my personal opinion, their shoes aren't amazing, but they have a cause. They have something that people believe in. And now you have other companies trying to do what Tom's does. I'm surprised we don't see actually more of it. Because consumers buy Tom's shoes because they believe in what Tom's is doing. For every pair of shoes that you buy, they donate a pair of shoes to people in need. It's a great cause. And it's a why. It's not a what. We do not sell shoes. It's what we believe in. It's what makes us get up in the morning. It's why we created this company. If you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. If you talk about what you believe, you will attract those that believe what you believe. And I'll show you why that's important. The law of diffusions of innovations. The law of diffusion of innovations. Everyone in this room at some point in time is on this scale. The first 2.5% make up the innovators. The next 13.5% are the early adopters. And then you have the 34% with the early majority, the late majority, and then the laggards. The innovators and the early adopters act and think the same way. And they are the influencers. These are the people that are waiting in line. These are the people that make the gut decisions. These are the people that think with the why. These are the people that make the decisions with the why. And they make up 16%. And according to the law of diffusion of innovations, in order to reach mass market success, you have to reach a tipping point. Anybody can brag to a 10% market share, but how do you get to mass market share? How do you reach the tipping point? Well, with this standard curve that you see in most statistics, if you can reach the innovators and the early adopters, the early majority follows suit with the early adopters, or the innovators and the early adopters, and you reach that tipping point. And that tipping point is what leads you to mass market success, because you have the early majority and then the late majority that follow. The laggards over on the right, those are the people, as Simon says, that have a touch-tone phone because you can't buy a rotary phone anymore. Now, the great news is that this wasn't Simon Sinek's opinion. This is not my opinion. It's built in the tenets of biology. Not psychology, biology. Because if you take a look at the cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, the outer part of our brain and the inner part of our brain correlates perfectly with the golden circle, as Simon describes it. Our outer brain, our newest brain, or our Homo sapien brain, is what's responsible for our what? It's our rational thinking, our analytical. This is what deals with language. It absorbs the message that comes in. Not the feeling, but the marketing message that comes in. And our inner system, the limbic system, is what makes up our how and our why. This is what controls feelings. This is what controls actually making decisions, our behavior, and more importantly, our loyalty. Loyalty in the car business. People don't buy what you do. Again, they buy why you do it. So I'll give you a few examples of why buy messaging. There's quite a few, and I'll just give you some that have been talked about recently. Subaru store took their entire message, their entire branding, everything from the top down, and became your stress-free dealership. And that speaks to a why. That's great, because car shoppers don't want a stressful experience. So from 2011 to 2014, this Subaru store was able to triple their total dealership gross, simply by taking their why messaging and applying it to everything that they do. You go to their website, they have their stress-free pricing, they have their stress-free service, they even have a stress-free massage. Sounds like an oxymoron, but it's a great idea. A stress-free finance experience. Again, adopt a why buy message, triple dealership gross. Another very simple example of integrating a why buy message into a website is the use of the main navigation. In this example, Carter VW was able to add a why buy Carter VW page in their main navigation. And I'll discuss why that main navigation is real important. Another great example of how you can take a new why buy message, maybe you have an existing one, and convey that message to consumers is by using video. I'm a big fan of video. I have been for a while. And there's some great stats that support the use of video on a website. A video on your homepage could act as your first salesperson. It answers questions just like in sales. You want to answer questions before they're actually asked. And it addresses all the concerns that a consumer would have. Statistics have proven that you have 10 seconds or less to convince a website visitor to stay. Now, this is a general statistic, not automotive specific, but if you take this simple idea, if you have 10 seconds to get somebody to stay, how do you get them to stay? It's proven that consumers who watch video on a website stay, on average, up to 2 minutes longer than website visitors that do not see a video. Statistics also show that the longer you get a consumer to stay on your website, the more trust you have built with them, the more inclined they are to actually make a decision, aka pick up the phone, make a call, fill out a form. Google released a lot of data about how car shoppers behave with video. When Google ran this study, they found that roughly 49%, well, it's 49%, roughly half of all car shoppers who watch a video about a dealership actually visit the dealership. Now, I'm not sure about you, but that's a statistic that's worth noting. They also found that roughly 84% of car shoppers who watch video plan to watch video the next time they buy a car. And then last but not least, they found that 1 in 4, or 25% of car shoppers watch over an hour a month in online video. So here's a simple example of a company that's taken a why buy message and integrated it to the homepage of their website. This is above the fold, great placement. In this case, they actually did an autoplay with mute. I recommend that if you do actually have a video on your website, you do it with the autoplay, mute by default. That mute by default, obviously as a consumer, you come to a website, you don't know where a video is playing. It's a very frustrating experience. But as I'm scrolling down on a website and I see a video playing with a button that says, click to unmute, then I'm going to actually, just being curious, want to see what that video is about. So by clicking it, you could then expand it and have the audio play. You take this why buy message and then you apply it to your entire company, from sales to service. It becomes the basis of all communications and your starting point, just like we had seen with the example, stress-free finance, stress-free service. And what I've done is I've created an exercise, an internal exercise for you to take in your dealership, because the point of this session today is to give you the tools that you can do something tomorrow. And one of the things I've done is created an internal worksheet that you guys can have on your own that will allow you to work with your team to come up with your why buy messaging. So if we do this, we address the why, what do we end up doing? We end up achieving mass market success. Now we'll talk about the paradox of choice. What have we done? It's an example of a VDP. In most cases, a prized possession of most car dealerships. And in this specific VDP, we have 11 different ways that a consumer can take action. 11 different ways. Earlier I had discussed when I started my presentation that you have been victimized. And the example was given that there's so many different new widgets that are offered to you on an ongoing basis. You just want to do everything you can to get a consumer on your lot because you believe that you can help them get in a car that they will love. But what have we done? So a great psychologist and author, Barry Schwartz, wrote a book, The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less. And ultimately what he concluded was that more choices leads to confusion. So we're looking at that VDP with 11 choices. What is it actually doing? It's paralyzing consumers. More choices leads to confusion, anxiety, and most consumers feel comfort in just exiting the situation. How many people enjoy facing conflict? So we'll summarize the paradox of choice and keep it short and sweet. What it does is it creates the imagined alternative. The more options there are, the more easy it is to regret the option that you chose. Imagined alternative. Increased expectation. With more options, your expectations of what you're going to get increases. The example that Barry Schwartz gave is you used to be able to buy a pair of jeans, walk into a store and say, I need a pair of jeans. Great, you get the pair of jeans. They weren't the best pair of jeans, but they fit. You didn't have any expectations. If you didn't like them, you had society to blame. Now, you can walk into a store and get a slim fit, you can get a baggy fit, you can get a low rise, high rise. That more options that we have, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And in this case, when you have more options, who gets blamed? Yourself. You blame yourself, not society. Back in the day when there was less options, you blame society because that's what was available to you. But as a consumer, I'm coming to a website. I have 11 different ways that I can actually take action. I do chat instead of fill out a form. How am I ultimately going to feel? Well, psychologists have proved that you feel bad about the decision because of the more options that are created for you. So psychology is pointing against more choices. And then last but not least, those more choices increases paralysis and decreases satisfaction. An example I gave with jeans, a recent study was done with Vanguard 401k, and they did a study that showed that for every 10 options that were provided to employees for a 401k, participation in the 401k went down 2%. And there's another recent study that showed an example where they took a slew of consumers, put them in front of an ice cream shop that had 3 flavors, and then put them in front of an ice cream shop that had, guess, 31 flavors. And 9 times out of 10, the consumers were more happy and pleased with results and thought that the ice cream tastes better with less options. We're all victims of this, and it's the shiny new toy syndrome. What happens when everyone offers a widget that's guaranteed to increase conversion rates? It seems like they're coming out. There's this widget and that widget and this widget for sales and leads and finance. What ends up happening? When you add these shiny new toys and you fall victim to the shiny new toy syndrome, what ends up happening, and you have to wonder, is are you reallocating conversions? That new toy that guaranteed a 10% increase in conversion rates, maybe you added that widget and you saw a 10% increase. You saw 10% more leads as a result of it. But where did those leads come from? Did they come from somebody who was going to pick up the phone or fill out a form? Are you reallocating conversions, falling victim to the shiny new toy syndrome? What's ultimately happened is we've forgotten about the consumer. And the reality is that the marketing mediums have changed, but the rules haven't. The rules have not changed. So we'll take a look at some basic rules of marketing. You want to have content that matches consumers at every purchase cycle. You want to sell benefits and not features. And you want to give value. You want to educate before you ask the consumer to take action. Give value and educate before you ask the consumer to take action. Only ask them to do one thing and ease their concerns. We'll take a look at some landing page core competencies. The consumer's needs are first. We want to simplify the experience and the actions. We want to stay current with incentives and offers. I can't tell you how important this is. It's one of those things that you just don't want to do because you have to do it. But we're missing out on leveraging OEM branding. Consumers tune in to what? WIIFM radio. What's in it for me? And what's in it for a consumer who is in the market to buy, that's qualified to buy, is the best deal for them. You want to track every engagement in action. I'll give you specific examples how you can look beyond form leads and phone calls. And they need to work perfectly across devices. Mobile's on the rise. It has been on the rise. They need to work perfectly across all devices. You want to test and track everything. We're big believers in testing and not trusting our gut. As marketers, you can never trust your gut. You have to let the math tell you what works. We've done all the work, the heavy lifting for you, and we've tested several permutations of what a great VDP would look like, and here's what worked, and it worked well. A very simple experience where we're not asking a consumer to do 11 things. We're asking the consumer to do 2 things. They can call, or they can fill out a form. We tested this for several months for one of the largest dealer groups in the nation, who has a giant team of search marketing professionals that has tested every website provider. And the bottom line is that when you simplify your message and you give the consumer less options, you move the needle on the metrics that matter most. And what we found in doing this was a substantial improvement in SEM ROI. That's what we're here for, SEM ROI. 30% plus decrease in cost per lead, a giant increase in conversion rate for phone calls, and a giant increase in conversion rate for form leads. Now the great news, if some of you have followed this presentation well, is you may be thinking, but did you reallocate conversions? Now here's the wonderful news. In this study, in this test, by the way, with multiple large dealer groups and multiple stores and multiple markets, we were held accountable for the cost per sale of a vehicle, not the cost per lead. I'm showing you what you can understand. The cost per visit of a consumer coming to the store, and we didn't get credit for any traffic prior. If a consumer had visited the website in the previous 6 months, no credit. It's like the visit didn't even come to what we were doing. First step, simplify your message. Second step, if you're going to test the shiny new toy, do it one by one. Do it one by one. Next, you want to track and test everything in your path. This is a simple study. One of the common things that we think about is the homepage slider. How important is it? How many people click on it? I'm not sure how many of you are actually tracking. In this case, it was nd.edu, Notre Dame's website. Kind of a similar experience where the students are familiar with the school. In a dealership environment, the consumers are familiar with the dealership. And what they found ultimately is that 1%, 1 to 2% actually clicked on the slider. And 90%, almost 90%, clicked on the very first one and nothing else. So if you're going to do a slider, make the first one count. This is a great example of a company that made the first one count. This is a GMC dealer, and they leveraged a persona, a why. This was the GM Educator Discount. It had such great success in addressing their personas and the why that they were able to take this initiative to other channels and achieve giant success. Here's an internal study that we did. This is actually something that I championed. I was a big believer in it. And in testing our dynamic conversion pages, I wanted to find a way to profile anybody who came to the website. I knew that consumers were either ready to buy, they were just looking, they have questions, or they wanted to get qualified financing. It was a big failure. 10% clicked on my boxes, but that's okay because as a marketer, I've learned to never trust your gut. What consumers actually did end up doing is they wanted main navigation because they were so used to it. Remember that Carter VW example I gave you with the why buy and the navigation? Take a look at your analytics and see what pages are most trafficked on your site. Make sure they're front and center on your navigation. Excuse my French, why beat around the bush? Let's give them what they're looking for. This is what ended up actually working. An Amazon-style experience where a consumer comes back to the home page of these landing pages for paid search, and they saw cars that they had recently viewed. They were alerted to price drops of those cars, similar vehicles, so on and so forth, and then ultimately get people to inventory and VDPs. So this means that your navigation on your website is really important. Check your own pages, find out what's really engaging users, and make sure it's in your navigation. Test your ads. It's really important to start testing with your ads. As I said, we're big fans of testing. We let math tell us what works, not our guts. From key phrases to text ads to landing pages, we've tested millions of permutations. The queries that consumer is using, you want to take a look at, well, what's relevant, right? This is a specific query for a Ford F-150 Limited. Which ad to you is most relevant? The one that actually speaks to what it is. It just turns out that increase in relevancy actually impacts your cost per click. Quality score is a big impact on your cost per click. And all quality score is your click-through rate probability. Leverage OEM branding to display incentives and make sure that those incentives, Toyotathon is a great example, are actually on your website, on your landing page. Website provider analytics are phenomenal, but there are more KPIs beyond pages and visits and views that you can learn from. And if you ask them, they will help in most cases. If 90% of your site visitors and your SEM traffic won't convert, how will you know what worked in anything that you do? So you want to go beyond form leads and phone calls. You take a look at macro and micro conversions. On the left, we have service views, research, inventory, financing, trade value, service, buying. These are micro conversions at the end. Our favorite KPIs to track are form leads, chats, phone calls, and mobile leads from a macro standpoint, value trade, micro goals, directions, financing, print, VDPs, time on site. These on the right will give you more transparency to your ROI and your paid search than you could ever imagine. Because again, more than 90% won't actually ever fill out a form or pick up a phone to call you. Now the great news is that our co-founder, Patrick Bennett, put together a very easy one-click install that you can add to your Google Analytics that will allow you to hold your SEM vendors more accountable. I have the URL here. I can provide it to you after my presentation, and I also have it on a URL that you can access. A one-click install, because you might be thinking to yourself, how am I going to do this? I don't know analytics. We made that easy for you. Level the playing field using Google Analytics and track your vendors separately. Go beyond Google Analytics. There's phenomenal tools that will tell you things about site visitors that will make you feel like you're the NSA. Crazy Egg provides phenomenal heat map tracking. You can see whether or not people are scrolling down on the page. And Mouseflow, one of my favorite. I actually get to watch consumers. I feel like a creep watching their mouses move on the page. It'll give you more insight than you ever imagined. Last but not least, we'll go over call handling briefly. One of the quickest ways to get more SEO or more ROI out of your SEM is to get better on the phone. And there's a company that specializes in just doing that. In Car Wars came out with a study where they listened to over 2 million calls from 300 dealers, and what they found is that the average cost per qualified call is roughly $600. The amazing stats is that 4 out of every 5 callers were never invited to a dealership for an appointment. This is 2 million calls. This is over 300 dealers. They also found that of these 2 million calls, 39% of inbound sales calls failed to reach a qualified employee. Why is this important? So what they do is they hold these really fun grudge matches, and this example that I brought is Van Tile and Larry H. Miller. And what they found is before this grudge match, the dealers on average, were requesting 80 to 100 appointments per week. They picked up 200 calls within the first few rings. And then during the match, they requested 600 appointments. And they picked up 647 calls within the first few rings. So where do you go from here? What will you make of this session? Is it possible that one guy in one session can inspire your dealership to achieve ROI that you've never imagined possible? It is possible. And you are not alone. And what you have to evaluate is, what is your why? Will you simplify what you ask from car shoppers that visit your website? Will you test and track it? And will you hold your phone call handling accountable? So here's my promise to you. If you do these things, I will guarantee your success, just as I said in the beginning. You are not alone, and I will act as your personal concierge. There's a no-pitch policy. These are not services that my company offers. This is me believing that every single one of you in this room has the ability to change car shopping forever. How many dealerships we have in here, I'm not sure, but hundreds of thousands of people can have a different experience. You can truly change car shopping forever. Thank you for your time. My name is Truman Hedding, and I'm with Showroom Logic.